Should you buy the Lumix S1 Mark II or the Lumix S1R Mark II? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be answering that question on which Lumix flagship hybrid camera model is going to be best for you. And a quick disclaimer, this video is going to be more of a video perspective focus. I am a filmmaker first and foremost, so all the photo specs of these cameras I will briefly touch upon, but in all honesty, I do use both these cameras more in a video first position, so these are where my thoughts are going to be coming from. Let's start off with the big thing is going to be the price of these cameras. The Lumix S1R Mark II is going to be coming around $3,300, and then for $100 cheaper, the Lumix S1 Mark II at $3,200. They have the exact same camera chassis for both of them, the exact same physical build with the front record buttons, the front and rear tally lights, front function buttons, the closing shutter, the free tilt screen with the flip up, flip down, and flip out. The only physical difference between these two cameras is going to be that megapixel sensor. On the S1R Mark II, it is going to be a 44.3 megapixel sensor, so you're getting higher quality and higher megapixel photos. Meanwhile, on the S1 Mark II is going to be a 24 megapixel stack sensor. So you're going to be getting overall faster readout speeds and better video performance on the S1 Mark II. Meanwhile, on the S1R Mark II, you're going to have some better photo capabilities, but they definitely did not hold back on what the video capabilities are of this camera. There's just a couple caveats that we're going to touch point on. In terms of video specs, starting with the S1R Mark II, it's pretty impressive. This camera does shoot 8K up to 30 frames a second, 6.4K open gate up to 24 and 60 frames a second. There will be a firmware update for 8.1K open gate and 7.2 open gate in the future on this camera as well. But for your slow motion options, you are able to shoot 4K, 48, 60, and 120 frames a second. There is a little bit of a catch here because you are going to have a 1.17x crop when you are cropping into those higher frame rates, and you're in contrast-based autofocus and 120 frames a second. Meanwhile, on the S1 Mark II for video specs, you don't have 8K, but what you're getting in return is going to be 6K open gate, 24 and 30 frames a second, and my favorite feature yet, 5.1K open gate, 48 and 60 frames a second. Finally, a setting to have a higher frame rate in open gate, being able to record on the entire sensor's width and height for both vertical and horizontal deliverables. But it doesn't stop there because you are also getting a ton more video specs in this camera as well. Something like you can have Cine 4K up to 96 frames a second in phase detect autofocus with full frame, no crop. You still get 48 and 60 frames 4K autofocus with no crop whatsoever, which is also great. And then you can also have 4K 120 frames a second and 1080 240 frames a second, but that's when you're going to have that 1.17x crop and it's going to be contrast based. But if you want slow motion on the Lumix S1 Mark II and have phase detect autofocus, have subject tracking, you can do that all the way up to 96 frames a second. There's also CineScope on this camera in a 2:4:1 ratio, which is fun to use, but for a practical client perspective or using this for work, I don't see it as a likely shoot setting. In terms of color science, I would like to say that both of these provide very rich colors, but in terms of color accuracy, the S1R Mark II compared to the S5 was extremely color accurate, and it looked really pleasing on camera, and I was really shocked by how much better the color can get. So when I got the S1 II on my hands, I was wondering if it was going to perform the same color. And this is where the results were a little bit interesting. So in all of my testing results, what I ended up noticing was that the Lumix S1 Mark II was actually producing even more color accurate images in comparison to the Lumix S1R Mark II. The biggest things that I noticed is that there is more of a magenta shift towards the reds of the camera. So your magenta is looking a little bit more red, providing just a little bit more of a pinker image to the sensor right out of the camera with just a basic V-Log Rec 709 conversion lens. Meanwhile, the S1 Mark II in comparison will look more towards the green colors, but it's going to be more color accurate when you are just doing a basic conversion LUT like this one. Now, in terms of matching these colors, if you already have an S5 I did notice that matching the S1 Mark II is actually a lot easier to match the S5 versus the S1R Mark II. But if you are looking to get a solid A/B camera setup and you don't want to spend the same money for two of one camera, well, then you could always get the S1 Mark II and the S1 Mark II and have them basically look identical right out of the box. Now, dual native ISO on both these cameras is a little bit different between both of them because of the higher megapixel sensor on the S1R Mark II. So in vlog, the base ISO is at 200 and the dual native ISO is going to be at 1000. But this is going to be at 13 stops of dynamic range. If you want an extra half a stop, you can turn dynamic range extension on, and you are going to be having your base ISOs be at 400 and 2000 on the S1R Mark II. Meanwhile, on the S1 Mark II, your base ISOs in vlog is going to be at 640 and 5000, and you're going to be having 14 stops of dynamic range. Now, you can get an extra stop of dynamic range when you turn dynamic range boost mode on, and this is going to have the base ISOs be the exact same in vlog, 640 and 5000, but you're getting 15 stops of dynamic range. So if you need a camera that performs better in dynamic range, well, then the S1 Mark II is definitely going to be taking the cake here with 14 stops right out of the box. And if you need that extra range, 15 stops with dynamic range boost mode. And a quick interruption for this video. If you guys been enjoying this content and you want to see more Lumix related videos and learn how to master your Lumix camera, well, you should definitely consider subscribing. Anyways, I'll let you get back to the content. Now, the last thing I do want to touch point on in this video is going to be the overheating, which is kind of a hot topic between these cameras. Now, on the S1R Mark II, personally speaking, I have definitely experienced overheating numerous times with this camera, where if I've had on-client shoots, had to wait and let this camera cool down. Since then, I did a couple more testing and found some of the best settings to have this camera not likely overheat on you and be a little bit more comfortable for longer record times in hotter temperatures. But basically, I have an entire video explaining this, but turning the fan settings to fast and recording on an SD card. If you want to avoid overheating altogether on the S1R Mark II, just record into an SSD and you should be good to go. Now, meanwhile, on the S1 Mark II, this camera definitely has a better overall overheating performance right out of the box with this camera. But if you do want basically no overheating in 90 or 33 Celsius weather, well, then I just recommend turning your thermal management set to high and then have your fan settings set to auto 1. So it's always proactively trying to cool down the camera and never let it get to the moment where it has to start cooling the camera down with the fan settings on auto 2. All that said, if you live in a hotter environment where overheating is more of a concern of yours, well, then the S1 Mark II is definitely going to be taking the cake. And I guess one thing I didn't really touch point on is going to be the photos between both these cameras. Again, I am a filmmaker first and I run a video production company, so it's hard for me to say the S1R Mark II takes that many better photos than the S1 Mark II. If I'm being 100% honest, I'm not going to be noticing the difference between a 24 megapixel photo and a 44.3 megapixel photo. And if I'm being even more honest, I'm probably just going to be using hybrid zoom with JPEGs and exporting my JPEG LUTs on the photos as is with this camera. So in personal honesty, in my overall thoughts, if you're looking for a photo hybrid camera, well, then the S1 Mark II is definitely going to be taking the cake. It has a better overall photo performance, higher megapixels. Granted, if you're primarily a video shooter or you're more interested in getting into the entire video world, well, that's where the S1 Mark II definitely just makes a lot more sense. And it's $100 cheaper, which is very nice. So the S1 Mark II, sure, it doesn't have 8K, but what you're getting in return is 6K open gate. You're having open gate 24, 30, 48, and 60 frames a second, which is to me a huge feature. Better color, better overall rolling shutter, dynamic range, better in low light. Overall, I would say the S1 II is going to make a lot more sense for more people in general because of how much of this camera is a overall powerhouse in both the photo and the video realm. And again, $100 cheaper. And if I'm being 100% honest, this is just me scratching the surface with the S1 Mark II. I'm definitely gonna be making a ton more videos on this camera, but I would be curious, if you guys had to pick one of these cameras for yourself, are you gonna be picking up the Lumix S1R Mark II or the Lumix S1 II? And if you are interested in seeing my entire overview on this camera and everything you need to know about this camera, you can check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Till next one, guys, peace.